we've got a few more signings to dive into.
This offense continues to evolve as the season goes on.
Welcome into Bucs Insider, presented by Hard Rock Bet Sportsbook. Casey Phillips here with Scott Smith and Brianna Dix. We are back and better than ever after a bye week.
Rested.
Us, like the team, needed a bit of rest and rejuvenation.
Yes.
We're all more enthusiastic now than we were a week ago, and it is nice to have it dead center. And of course, what we talk about every year when the bye week comes is who might this help with injuries? And oh my gosh, it's such a nice time to have the bye week because of injuries that no matter when it falls, we're thrilled it comes. So I know that there were a lot of injury question marks going into this. I know that now it is only Thursday. We'll find out a lot more. But do we feel like we've gotten answers on anybody and maybe even one person in particular?
Well, a lot of the guys that we had questions about, you come out of the bye and there's still questions about when they're going to come back. But we do have at least some concrete progression for at least one of them. And that's starting right tackle Luke Gedeke, who on Monday had his 21-day practice window opened to return from injured reserve. And he can return to the active roster at any point during that. So he could theoretically be in play for this weekend against the Patriots. That's not necessarily going to happen. It might be next week. He was limited in practice on Wednesday. So I don't think we can say for sure he's back now, but he looks like he's pretty close.
A step in the right direction.
Yeah.
So what about some of the other injuries? Because, of course, it is not just him. There have been a lot of different guys at different position groups affected. So did we learn anything from Wednesday and Thursday's practices?
Bucky Irving, Hassan Reddick, and Chris Godwin did not participate in practice on Wednesday. But good news, Jacob Parrish, who left the Saints game early with an oblique injury, was a full participant on Wednesday.
You remember going into the last game that we had an 18-person injury report. It's a little lower now, and I think one of the things that jumped out at me is Emeka Egbuka is no longer on that. So he played the last two games through a hamstring injury. Hopefully that means he's closer to 100%. And Baker Mayfield is still on the injury report with his oblique and knee injuries, but he says he's feeling better after that break.
That's a big deal. And we normally would be moving into talking about the previous game that just happened, but of course we didn't have one of those. And so with it being dead center of the season, we thought, last show we kind of talked about just overall takeaways, but this show we thought we wanted to do a positive and a gripe, that each of us gets a thing that we want to shout out, that we're excited about, that we're pumped about, and then we also get to have an early Festivus that we're just going to complain about something, gripe about something.
And it doesn't have to be about the Bucs. It can be about anything.
It can be about anything. Anything whatsoever NFL.
Not even NFL related?
Well, that's true. I guess we should have clarified that. I have a lot of gripes.
I got some driving gripes I could spend an hour or two on.
But how about, then in that case, we could do a whole, maybe Salty Dogs, we need to do a gripes show. We need a Festivus show this year.
That's a good idea, actually.
Okay, so positive first half of the season developments. Bree, what do you have for us?
For me, it has been the defense getting home, the pass rush. I know over the last 3 games, there has been 15 sacks, 15 different players getting to that. I think there's at least 7 players that have 2. Yaya Diaby's leading the pack with 4. But I think really throughout the offseason, one of the biggest emphasis points that Todd Bowles continuously stressed was his desire to get more from outside linebackers, to generate more pressure with 4 guys. You're getting that this season, which is also, it works in tandem. Then your coverage is able to kind of capitalize on some of those errant throws with takeaways. But really just this ability for them to get home, get quarterbacks on the ground, and going up against a guy like Drake May on Sunday, that's going to be critical to not over-pursue and create a run lane for him to do.
We're finding out that we have a lot of really good blitzers.
Yeah.
I mean, we already knew that about Antoine, and Levante's good at it whenever they decide to let him do it. But Servassier Dennis, Jacob Parrish,
coming from all levels,
Tyke Smith. So they're not always blitzes either. Sometimes there's simulator pressures where Tyke comes off the edge, but a DT drops back or something.
Yeah, and I think, not to jump ahead to the Patriots preview, but I do think that'll be an interesting and important part of it.
I think that's
next
what
week.
You were just saying, right?
Yep, I think that's going to be a big part of it. So, Scott, what about you? What is your positivity that you want to shout out?
I think the biggest positive development for the Buccaneers this season as compared to the last 2, both of which went well, right? But there were some lulls there, is that the Buccaneers this year are making the big plays on both sides of the ball at the end of the games. And we obviously won a lot of very close games, and the record could be anything from 7-1 to 3-5 right now, but they're winning those close games at the end. It started right from the beginning in the Atlanta game on both sides of the ball. First, you had the big catch from Emeka Egbuka for the touchdown that put us ahead, but they still had time to come back. And then they almost scored a touchdown, and Antoine Winfield broke up that play right near the goal line. It looked for a moment like that was it. At this point, I'm thinking he's got it, and then Antoine made that big play, forced him to try a field goal, which they missed. So. There's been a lot of that, and I think that's probably my biggest positive development for the Buccaneers so far.
Yeah, I think mine is next man up.
Well,
That has been the theme of the season.
Yes.
But it's one thing to say that. Everybody says it's one of the most used phrases.
Yeah, that's
it's
for
become
sure.
such a cliche at this point in the league. But just because you say, well, we got to have next man up, doesn't mean it happens.
Right.
There's a reason your starters are your starters. It is reasonable to say that there would be a drop-off if they are not in there. But how well does your next man step up? And the Buccaneers, I am just so amazed at the next man in every position group that has had to step up in the ways they've done it. I mean, of course, wide receiver, right? That's the one that's been most decimated by injuries for the longest this season. Looking at Tez Johnson, I mean, again, first month of the season, 1 catch, 8 yards.
Right.
October, 14 catches, 205 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Sterling Shepard is only 5 catches shy of his season total last year on 15 less targets.
Wow.
So he's
That's a
even
good
more
number.
efficient than he was all of last season and about to catch the same number of passes. And of course, then also on the offensive line, 5 different right guards in 8 games is insane. And of all position groups, that consistency is the most important. It's not just a next man up. It's now this is a whole new group of people working together. It affects the people next to you. So there's not been one spot on the offensive line that's had the same guy at it all 8 games. And the fact that they have been able to still, I mean, we're still in the top third of the league in terms of sacks allowed. I know there's a lot to that of Baker scrambling, some other things happening, but you would not be shocked if a team that has dealt with this kind of offensive line issue of injuries would be leading the league in sacks allowed or, having really...
It could have gone bad.
It could have gone really, really bad. And I just think it's been amazing to watch the way those guys have stepped up. And then even the way Josh Grizzard has handled having nothing go according to, I'm sure, the plan he came up with this offseason. So for me, it was just the next man up mentality
good call.
was a huge part of it. So, all right, we are going to take a quick break. But when we come back, we get to gripe about things. So don't go anywhere. Welcome back into Bucs Insider. Casey Phillips, Scott Smith, and Bree Dix. It's time for the gripes. Again, this can be NFL related, Bucs related. If people have been paying attention to our show, I bet they have an inkling of the direction that you're going.
Yeah, this isn't exactly
Shocking.
new.
Breaking news.
I've spoken on this topic before. This is actually going to be a 2-level gripe. The first part of the gripe is I started saying in the spring, you remember, that this new kickoff rule with the touchback at the 35, combined with all these teams like the Bucs who have kickers who can make it from 55 or 60 yards, is fundamentally changing the game. And now everybody's saying it. And nobody's saying, well, Scott Smith said back in May that this was going to happen, and it is happening.
You keep
Look at this, the Monday night game, Dallas at Arizona, this past week, which I didn't see because I have YouTube TV, but I later saw the highlights. Dallas got the ball back with just a few seconds left in the first half, completed 2 passes for 12 yards, and then tried a 68-yard field goal. Now, Brandon Aubrey missed it, but we all know Brandon Aubrey probably makes that 2 or 3 times. 2 completions for 12 yards, and they could have had points. That's not good football. In my opinion. So I'm griping about the rule and the fact that I'm not getting any credit for being the one who said this was going to happen.
Well, we remember
Thank you.
that you were griping about this from the start.
Yep.
Okay, so next up, Bree, what is your gripe?
Mine is the inadvertent whistle. So I think we were all
Like
a little...
in general, or just the one that we...
Just the particular one about us.
for us.
We're fine if it happens to other teams.
But I think we're all a little bitter about that. But Antoine Winfield Jr. appeared to have scored off the Jamel Dean forced fumble, and then the touchdown was nullified by the erroneous whistle, as they called it, which meant that the defense couldn't advance the ball. The play was blown dead. Neither sideline heard the whistle. Everybody continued playing. But while that touchdown wouldn't have changed the course of the game or changed the outcome, it could have further punctuated the victory for Tampa Bay. But also, a play like that's going to probably make the difference in whether or not Antoine Winfield Jr. makes first-team All-Pro. And stats like that is what impacts and dictates Pro Bowl voting. That impacts first team All-Pro. That impacts your Hall of Fame numbers one day. I mean, all of those things. So that, to me, was the most frustrating part about that play.
Something that I would like to point out about one of those plays as we've watched the replay, if you watch when he scoops the fumble, he steps on Yaya on his way.
Did he really?
And it's just because of where everybody was and trying to get his feet up. And I was like, you know what? Yaya's doing the most for this team.
Yes.
That he is whatever you need him to be, that he is ready to be that he scoops it and right there, he steps right on Yaya's chest.
Yeah, he's like, what did I?
That can't have.
But Yaya's still celebrating
Yeah,
for him.
he's still happy for him. And see,
Yes.
that's a true teammate. Like, let me give you a boost and celebrate. And I'm imagining it probably didn't feel great the next day, but in the moment, everything was fine.
So you got a gripe?
Of course I've got a gripe. You know, I'm positive all the time, but if you give me an opportunity, I will come up with a gripe. My gripe is not getting to see all the Bucs wide receivers and what could have been. My gripe is what
Casey,
could have been.
That's
Thank
a great
you.
one.
I just feel like this could have been the most special, incredible thing in the history of this franchise.
Wow.
I'm telling you, in terms of the abilities of what this room could have done. And you can't prove me wrong because we haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
So this is, I think, we don't know. And that's what I hate is that we don't know what we missed out on.
Yeah.
And looking at the fact that you have your top 2 wide receivers on the roster of all time in franchise history and dang near every category. And then, now it turns out Emeka Egbuka's having the kind of start to his career that makes you think he could be someone who could challenge them in those points, to have all 3 of those. And then, Jalen McMillan, who was incredible last year. And then, to even see guys like Tez and Shep stepping up the way they are. I don't remember there being a group like this in a very long time. And we have been robbed of what it could have looked like altogether. That is my gripe.
Yeah, it seems unfair.
It's very unfair and very sad. All right, we have more coming up here on Bucs Insider. Don't worry, it'll be more positive. We're going to look ahead to the next game. We're done griping, and so come back right after this. Welcome back into Bucs Insider. Casey Phillips, Scott Smith, and Bree Dix. We are now getting into this upcoming Patriots game. So Drake May, I feel like this guy's been getting a lot of attention, a lot of hype, a lot of praise. It feels like our guys are really willing to sing his praises. This is not a young rookie anymore that we don't know what to think of him.
Yeah, well, breakout year in his second season. He's in the MVP race, leads the NFL in passer rating, completion percentage. He also leads the league in throws of over 20-plus yards. Just has really, really good touch on the deep ball, but also one of the things that makes him so dangerous is what he's able to do when he extends plays outside of the pocket, using his legs on those design runs, the scrambles, and him kind of stepping up into the A-gap, taking advantage of the middle of the field when teams leave that open, or if a guy over-pursues and leaves the edge, he's going to be able to exploit that, find a guy downhill, can layer the football to all 3 levels. So this is going to be a game that is going to test our defense, both horizontally and vertically.
Yeah, and I think to me what's interesting about it is that he doesn't have a guy that's his guy that he's always throwing to, or that typically you look at an offense and the stats and you're like, it's either that running back or that wide receiver is the guy we got to stop. They're really doing it kind of by committee.
Right.
And they have a lot of different guys that can beat you or can have the big game that, you do have Stephon Diggs, who of course has the most sort of name recognition. And then you've got Kayshon Boutte and, may not play this week. We'll see. Demario Douglas and of course Hunter Henry. We know what a tight end can do. And I think just the middle of that field, even though their running backs can make catches, which we've talked about that being a bit of an Achilles heel for the Bucs this year. So just knowing that it could come from anywhere at any time, I will say I'm very happy, as we talked about that injury report, that the only DBs on it were listed as full participants even on a Wednesday. So this does feel like the healthiest that our secondary has been all season. And so when you do have a lot of different guys that could go to, it's nice that there isn't necessarily one person that might get exploited. Everyone's kind of more full strength. So Scott, what are you going to be looking to for this game?
Well, the Patriots really went on a spending spree in free agency, especially on defense. It's something they seem to have done a couple times in the years since Tom Brady left. This time it really seems to have worked out quite well. They reloaded. Mike Vrabel comes in. Obviously, he probably had some sorts of players to fit his scheme that he wanted. They signed Milton Williams, who was the most coveted free agent on the market, outbid the Panthers for him, and put him next to Christian Barmore in the middle. They signed linebacker Robert Spillane, who I think Baker called him a tackling machine. They also signed Carlton Davis, we know him well, Harold Landry on the edge, and all those players are working out pretty well.
Yeah.
And in particular, the run defense has been the best in the NFL at 75.4 yards allowed per game. So that's a big issue for the Buccaneers this week because, as we've seen from in recent weeks, Josh Grizzard wants to have a balanced offense. He really tried to run the ball in New Orleans, even though at times it wasn't working real well. So it'll be interesting to see how hard we try to establish the run against that defense. But they're playing really well, and Josh Grizzard said earlier today that they're extremely good at being gap sound. So not only are they great players and strong players, but they don't get out of their gaps. Their ends really seal the edges very well to try to funnel the runs to those big DTs, and they're all just playing that defense extremely well.
Yeah, and I think that it'll be interesting to see if they end up, therefore, maybe we try to go to a Mecca or someone with a little bit of a deep ball at first to try to stretch things out, because if they are so gap sound, you're going to have to maybe try and do some things to get people out of position and stretch the field a little bit more to give your guys some room. But yeah, I mean, maybe this is the game where it's not quite as balanced and you try to, either get Rashad more in space or you try to get some of those deep balls involved. It's going to be an interesting thing to see for sure, kind of strength on strength of some other areas. And then that's definitely with the run game.
Yeah, and there's plenty of analysis that shows that even if your running game isn't working great, as long as you are attempting to run, that still helps with that play action, to give that play action
for sure.
Bite.
All right, we have one more segment coming up here on Buccaneers Insider. We're going to get to some of those numbers and stats and things about fantasy as well, so we'll be right back. Welcome back to Bucs Insider. Casey Phillips, Scott Smith, and Bree Dix here. This is where we get into all of our numbers, the fantasy, the stats, anything that stands out to us.
The cool numbers. Not the nerdy numbers,
cool,
but the
amazing,
extremely cool, popular numbers.
Popular numbers.
Image gets me every time.
All right, so fantasy talk. We know that's what everybody cares the most about. Everybody out there playing fantasy, they're most intrigued by this.
My teams are on a roll, by the way.
Yeah, so in other words, listen to this man's fantasy advice. He knows what he's doing. Don't listen to me. I don't know what I'm doing. So tell me, what are some of your starts or sits that you're thinking about?
And so we're talking specific to the Buccaneers. Rachaad White, obviously I think a lot of teams moved him into their starting lineup if they had Bucky, or if they didn't have Bucky, but Bucky went down. Now Rachaad's your number one, and he's had a history of good fantasy success in the past. It's a tough play this week. I mean, in some cases you got buys, you don't really have a lot of choice, but if you do have a choice, I'd be a little bit leery of this one because of that great run defense we were just talking about, and the fact that we saw in New Orleans, Sean Tucker starting to eat into his total carries a little bit more, and Sean getting a lot of chances right at the goal line, which, probably Rachaad needs to score a touchdown for you to get a good return from him. So I'm a little worried. I'd be a little leery if you don't have to play him, if you got other options. On the other hand, if you're looking for a tight end option, Cade Otton, he's available in some leagues and a decent number of leagues. And he's had, I think, 4 catches at least in each of the last 4 games. As guys have been injured, it's not just Tez Johnson and Sterling Shepard that's stepping up. It's the tight end position with Cade Otton, and he's really the only tight end we have catching passes. So you combine that with the fact that the Patriots are allowing the 7th most fantasy points per game to tight ends.
Interesting.
And it could be a good little matchup right there. So if you're looking for a tight end, he might be on your waiver wire.
Yeah,
could be worth it.
That's an interesting one. All right, and I love these numbers you came up with next. You found some stats that are essentially perfect indicators of a Bucs win.
Yeah.
That if the Bucs do X,
these things,
they win the game, that they are whatever and when they do these things.
And some of these, we'll see the list here, some of these are, you could call them factors that lead to victories, and other ones are sort of like telling the story of what the Bucs have done well. So for instance, when we score first, we win.
Amazing.
And that's, we talk
starting
about
fast,
it. We talk about starting fast all the time, right? And it's not just, hey, let's start fast because we want to. It really
builds the momentum,
changes the game. You can see that our offense is good enough that if we can hold them to 20 points, under 20 or fewer points, we're going to win. Like 4-0 in that, and it's good that we've got 4 games that fit into that category. Obviously, positive turnover ratio. I'm not telling you. It's like next man up. It's something we've heard a million times, right? But it's true, you know. And the Bucs have. The only games they've lost is the only games where they've had negative turnover ratios.
And we know that's why Bowles talked about it so much in the offseason of creating those turnovers to help you with the ratio. Because, of course, you're never trying to turn the ball over on offense, but sometimes it happens. And so the more you can create on defense, the better that stat's going to be.
Yeah, and I think this next one's interesting. I think that one really matters, 5 or fewer penalties, because it's not just okay, we had 5 penalties for 40 yards, or we had 7 penalties for 60 yards. Oftentimes it's the yardage you gained that you lost because of a penalty.
Right.
Yeah.
Or it's the third down stop that was negated by a penalty. So when we are playing disciplined football and can avoid the flags, we've generally been better than our opponents.
Yeah, and we got a few
yeah.
more there quickly. But yeah, of course, the fact we've completed more than 60 passes 5 times is amazing. Been leading at halftime 5 times and leading after 3 quarters. These are big indicators. So
Yeah.
very cool
They've
stats.
done a good job of protecting leads.
Yeah, I like those a whole lot. All right, well, thanks so much for being with us. That's going to do it for us on this edition of Bucs Insider. Enjoy that game on Sunday. See you next week.